Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Immune Mystery, a doctor's impassioned quest to solve the puzzle of autoimmune disease, by Dr. Anita Kåss and Jørgen Jelstad, translated by Alison McCullough, narrated by Christina Delaine. Prologue. I stared at the line on the floor. "Just stand here, then walk out when your name is called," said the man who had positioned me there. He smiled reassuringly as he listened to the message being relayed over his huge headphones. On either side of the TV studio, rows of seats sloped up toward the ceiling. The laughter from the audience faded among the stage lights, and applause took over. It would soon be my turn. This was not my home turf. I preferred to be sitting in my office full of books and research articles, or to be examining samples under the fancy microscope we had at the hospital. But I was now about to appear on Scandinavia's biggest talk show. A couple of million viewers were waiting for me out there. What was I doing here? The past week had been a hectic one, with journalists calling me incessantly, and my husband finally having to act as my secretary, fielding their inquiries. I didn't have the stamina to respond to all of them. Sharing my life and work in this way was completely alien to me. This was everything I had worked so hard for, over so many years. Now the same questions would be put to me again, about the medicine, about the money, about Mum. The applause abated. On the round stage a few yards away, the talk show host smiled as he looked straight into the camera, took a breath, and said, "At a small hospital in Norway, a researcher has been working to develop a treatment for rheumatoid arthritis and possibly psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, and other diseases. Last week it was announced that the rights for this treatment have been sold for 800 million kroner. Please welcome researcher Anita Kåss." I had never been so nervous in my entire life. As I took those first few steps onto the stage, terrified that I might trip and fall, a hormonal storm was raging within me. In situations involving extreme stress, we all experience the more uncomfortable aspects of having a body. We might sweat or shake, feel slightly nauseous, or be struck by tingling sensations. Things happen that are beyond our control and that affect how we feel, what we are able to do, even our very sense of who we are. This discomfort is due to hormones, the body's messengers, working at a frantic pace. They affect cells throughout the entire body, among them billions of faithful soldiers, the army that keeps us alive. Every day our soldiers go to war. They march and fight, win battles and die, fearless and loyal until their dying breath. To study them under a microscope is to peer into a universe of superheroes, where each and every one has its own special powers and cool costume. This is the immune system, the world's most sophisticated killing machine. The body has many systems. The digestive system, consisting of the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and intestines, is easy to understand. Likewise, the cardiovascular system, with the heart at its center and its network of blood vessels, or the nervous system, with the brain and its branching nerve fibers. You can point to each of these systems and say, "There it is." But where in the body is the army, the immune system, stationed? The answer is everywhere. In order to defend us against attacks from foreign intruders, this inner army has access to every nook and cranny of the kingdom that is the body. Within this kingdom is everything we need in order to live: energy production, waste disposal, infrastructure and transport, lines of communication, and birthing rooms for cells. To get a person through the events of everyday life demands indefatigable efforts from billions of inhabitants on the inside. The body is a peaceful land surrounded by dangers. All foreign substances are potential enemies. This is why the body has a military academy that puts its soldiers through the toughest of training camps, and only the very best pass the final test. They patrol our borders and monitor alien intruders, checking them against a comprehensive register in order to find out who they are and whether or not it's safe to let them in. These soldiers are white blood cells, the cells of the immune system. And although they patrol the entire body, there are certain areas and organs that house large parts of this army. The training camps are located in the bone marrow and in a small organ located just above the heart, known as the thymus. Hundreds of outposts, the lymph nodes, are spread around the body, connected by the lymphatic vessels. If the blood vessels are the roads of this country, then the lymphatic vessels are its sidewalks. Even with vigilant defenses, intruders often manage to sneak past border patrols and outposts. Suddenly the bus station might be set on fire, or a bomb might be detonated by the waterworks. Hostile terrorists might be spawned within the residential areas of a city. When this happens, local soldiers quickly launch counterattacks to stop these intruders. Blaring alarms are sounded, and special forces storm the scene to strike the final blow. When the conflict is over, the inhabitants clear and repair the battlefield, and then life carries on more or less as before. But not always. This book describes how our spectacular immune system works and looks at what can happen when things go wrong, how the body's defenses are in fact able to make our existence a chronic nightmare, and how, in the most extreme cases, these defenses can destroy us, annihilating the very body that keeps them alive. When the body attacks itself, we call the condition an autoimmune disease. Auto means self. The immune system attacks the self. Examples of autoimmune diseases include rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Sjogren's syndrome, celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, and ankylosing spondylitis. The list is long. Over 100 diseases are thought to be caused by the body's own soldiers making disastrous mistakes. Statistically, if you invite 10 of your friends to dinner, one of them will suffer from an autoimmune disease. If you attend a wedding with 100 guests, one of them will have rheumatoid arthritis. And if you're among those who have 1,000 friends on Facebook, it's likely that a couple of these will have multiple sclerosis. Autoimmune diseases affect so many people that if you suffer from one yourself, you'll hardly be alone among family and friends. And if you yourself are not affected, you're guaranteed to know someone who is. Many tens of millions of people across the world live year upon year with the consequences of a mistake within their immune system. Autoimmune diseases are one of the most significant causes of death among people under the age of 70, and particularly among women. For healthcare authorities, autoimmune diseases are responsible for some of the largest expenditures in their budgets. For patients, the cost is in some cases a life ruined. Why the body attacks itself is one of medicine's greatest mysteries. It is also the mystery of my mother, a puzzle I have wanted to solve since childhood. The desire to solve this mystery has led me on a long journey towards something I hope will help to improve the lives of all those who suffer as my mum did. 1. Beginnings. I love the past. There are parts of the past I hate, of course. Paul McCartney, born in 1942 at Walton Hospital, Liverpool. Mum looked out at the October rain running down the window panes as she passed a hand over her belly. Would tonight be the night? She looked over at Dad and smiled. A new life awaited these two expectant doctors in Liverpool. They would soon be a family. It wasn't long before they entered the red brick building that housed Walton Hospital. A birth was far from Dad's everyday life as a psychiatrist, and the careful smile his patients had come to know so well now had a slightly nervous look to it. Unease and worry, pain, smiles and tears. Some hours in life contain everything. But in Mum's body, an unexpected storm was brewing. I was born on a Monday in 1979. Little did my parents know that this would be the start of years of suffering. They had married only a year before, back home in India. Dad's family had noticed a newspaper advertisement, and along with one of his brothers, Dad traveled hundreds of miles to the industrial city of Kanpur to find out more about the woman in the ad. A woman who had qualified as a doctor and who was strikingly beautiful in her colourful sari. Mum. After just a single meeting, they married in my father's hometown of Chandigarh. That same year, they packed their belongings into suitcases and moved to Liverpool, England, a common journey for highly educated Indians seeking a better future. There they found a small house in the suburb of Rain Hill, right next to the Wiston Hospital, where Dad started work. Mum got a job as a pathologist at Royal Liverpool University Hospital, where she spent her days studying tissue samples to look for cancer, and taking the occasional trip down to the autopsy room. It wasn't long before she became pregnant. When two cells merge and start to develop into a baby, there is one system the mother's body must hold in check: the immune system. The patrolling cells of this system quickly notice if anything foreign suddenly appears in their hunting grounds, and a growing fetus might be regarded as an intruder, a potential hazard. Over millions of years, the body's defenses have developed to attack everything that may pose a threat. But our survival as a species is equally dependent on mothers being able to carry children who are genetically different from themselves. This is the immunological paradox of pregnancy. The immune system is technically incompatible with having children, but something tells it that the fetus must be left alone. Without these finely tuned control mechanisms, none of us would have been born. For over 50 years, researchers have tried to find out exactly what happens during these 9 months, but we still don't have all the answers as to how the female body controls the cells of its immune system during pregnancy. Might this paradox help us to understand how autoimmune diseases arise? For Mum, this was exactly where it started, with pregnancy and birth, when something tipped her immune system out of balance. What is it that triggers this self-destructive cascade that causes such pain and suffering, and in some cases, even death? 6 weeks after my birth, Mum could no longer hold me. The pain in her fingers had become too great. After 9 months with the brakes on, her immune system was starting to return to business as usual. Cells capable of killing came back to life, and a howling wind of hormones began to blow in new directions. As Mum's immune system returned to its normal functioning, some error triggered a chain reaction of destruction that spread through her body, year after year. Her fingers and toes became contorted beyond all recognition. Complete exhaustion rendered her bedridden, and she was unable to walk. Her body slowly collapsed. She had developed rheumatoid arthritis. The cells of her immune system were confused, tricked into thinking that completely healthy parts of her body were foreign enemies. They were mutineers in her body's vital defenses. As Christmas approached, Mum had to leave it to others to pick me up whenever I needed comfort. "It'll pass," said Dad, but uncertainty hung in the air. Mum was a doctor. Perhaps she already feared that something was seriously wrong, that the instinctive duty of care she felt for me, her newborn daughter, would be swallowed up by the darkness of a disease where our roles would become reversed, where I would have to take care of her. I never got a sibling. Over the course of my childhood, Mum faded away before my eyes. Touch. I held Mum's hand carefully, so as not to hurt her strange, swollen fingers, as if I were handling a baby bird. We would sometimes take short walks together, sauntering through the neighborhood, but Mum didn't walk like other mothers. There was no skipping or running or games. Everything happened in slow motion. These are my earliest memories. In the 1980s, Liverpool, in northwest England, was a city deeply affected by the collapse of the labour market for industrial workers and dockers. These were bleak economic times. But sports fans were at least partly cheered by the fact that this was the golden age of Liverpool Football Club. 1 in every 6 of the city's employable inhabitants was out of work, and money was a constant concern for many. But in my family it wasn't financial problems that coloured our everyday activities. What I remember most is Mum's illness. When I was around 8 years old, we moved from the suburb of Woolton to a much larger house on the other side of the city in Blundellsands. "She needs more open space," everyone said to me. In the new house, my mother sat in a chair by the big living room window, as if keeping watch. She was either there or in bed. I hardly ever saw her anywhere else. Although she was burdened by her disease, she was always good to me. She said little. She was more of a loving presence. My childhood centered on 2 things. I went to school and was a diligent student. Then I came home and was a dutiful daughter. In the mornings I would enter the dark of the bedroom, where Mum would be dozing. In my hand I carried a bowl of Weetabix, the cereal sloshing around in cold milk. If Mum was awake, I would whisper, "Hello," before carefully setting the bowl on the bedside table. On a good day, she might give me a cautious smile. Her skin was shiny, like a balloon on the edge of bursting. Scars ran across her thighs like millipedes. Both her knees had prostheses. Her toes were pulled out into an unnatural V shape, as if they had been cracked apart. On the occasions she sat in the living room when there were other people around, I made sure to keep a close eye on her. Her toes were a forbidden zone. If anything touched them, she writhed in agony. When I got home from school, I would go straight in to see her again. The crispy bricks of Weetabix were by now reduced to a soft, sludge-like porridge. The sores in her mouth made all food seem like sandpaper, so she was often unable to eat. I would carry the tepid mixture down to the kitchen, a daily defeat. Mum couldn't sleep alone, so on the nights my father needed a break, I would lie in bed beside her. We would get up and turn her during the night, tentatively moving her frail, ever more emaciated body. One wrong move or a hand that gripped too hard, and she would groan with pain. In the half-dark of the bedroom, Mum's thin arms lay stretched out along the sides of the bed. They ended in red, swollen finger joints, her fingers permanently bent, like the neck of a swan. My father was strict, and the importance of doing well at school was impressed upon me from a young age. Helping me to learn was Dad's way of showing how much he cared about me. He taught me how to read when I was 3 years old, and at school I became one of the best students in my class. I felt this was the only way of making Dad happy. When I came home from school, I would usually sneak a few minutes of children's TV. As soon as I heard Dad's car come up the driveway, I would turn the TV off and make a start on my homework. Mum cared little for school or success. She only wanted me to be happy. Perhaps living with an illness makes good grades and careers seem less important than other things in life. Our house eventually functioned like a nursing home. We had domestic help, and relatives often visited to help out, aunts and cousins living with us for months at a time to reduce the strain on Dad and me. Our home life meant that I never had friends over. It wasn't that I didn't have friends, but I had no desire to bring my primary school classmates home to a hospital. I accepted the situation. Children who experience such challenges early in life often take on a lot of responsibility. I cared about and looked out for the other children at school. To my teachers, I was probably the perfect student, a mature and conscientious little girl. Our family situation changed my father. As the years passed, he put more and more distance between himself and what was happening at home. I remember feeling that he'd given up, and that even more of the burden was then transferred to me. Mum sank deeper into the darkness that surrounds all serious illnesses. She seemed depressed. Her social life vanished. Family friends mostly stopped by to check that everything was ticking over, not to chat about what had happened over the past week. Her helplessness also embarrassed her. The few visitors who came to the house were forced to go into the dark bedroom to greet her, and she eventually tried to avoid this as much as possible. The days became a repetitive affair, filled with pain and melancholy. I come from a family of doctors, and since Mum was also a doctor, she understood better than most just how bad her situation was. She was suffering from a serious case of a disease she knew would only worsen with time, and so I don't think it was long before she stopped fighting it. In the early 1980s, there were few treatments available, so hope for a better future was practically non-existent. My parents never spoke to me about these things. We rarely spoke at all. Our main focus was on getting Mum through one day at a time. Luckily, memory is a sorting machine that generally wants what's best for us, and one of my most vivid memories of Mum is a happy one. It was our last journey together, a trip to London to meet the most famous woman in the world. A last smile. "She's so tall," I thought as I walked across the stage toward her. Princess Diana held out her hand to me. I took it with my clammy one. "Congratulations," she said, a word she must have uttered countless times in her role as a member of the royal family. She was elegant, as always, in a blue skirt and red-buttoned jacket, her earrings oversized shiny yellow spheres. But even to a 13-year-old it was clear that she wasn't completely present. This Wednesday, February 10th, 1993, marked 2 months since she and Prince Charles had announced their separation. She was in the middle of the world's most talked-about breakup. Alongside 150 other children from all across the United Kingdom, I received the Child of Achievement Award at a prestigious ceremony held at the Queen Elizabeth II Centre in Westminster, London. The prize was awarded to children who had excelled in various areas, and not even royal relationship problems could dampen the joy and excitement felt by those of us who attended. My dutiful life, in which I juggled being good at school with being a carer at home, had been acknowledged. The room was full of children, parents, celebrities, and other guests. Among them, Mum sat in her wheelchair. She was wearing a red jacket and round, wobbly gold earrings. The 13-year battle against her illness was evident in her face. She had the characteristic moon face, a well-known side effect of years spent taking high-dose cortisone. The rest of her body was skin and bone. She was so proud that day. Her face broke into the genuine but cautious smile I had barely seen in years. The trip to London was like a holiday. We rarely left our suburb of Liverpool, and staying in a hotel together was fantastic. Even my dad was in a good mood. To have 2 happy parents seemed like a miracle at the time. They saw that recognition could also be paid to people who had been dealt a poor hand in life. Maybe it gave my mother hope to know that something good had come out of it all, something that gave meaning to the meaningless pain. 5 weeks later, her condition worsened, and she had to go into the hospital. We were used to this. She was continually being admitted with complications. But this time she didn't return home. She stayed alive so she could be at your award ceremony, said a friend of the family. Maybe she did, for all I know. And perhaps painful experiences can also give people drive, the drive to create meaning in their life's story. Release. Anita, come with me, your mother is very sick. I glanced toward the door of the classroom, where a family friend was beckoning to me. My heart sank. Despite Mum's countless hospital admissions, I had never been collected from school. The day before, she had been in good spirits, sitting up in the hospital bed and seemingly alert, even cheerful. I've since heard the same said of cancer patients, that their condition often seems to improve slightly just before they die. The tiles on the floor of the hospital corridor were diamond-shaped. Children often look at the floor when concerned or afraid. Outside Mum's room were several familiar faces, people who had come to say their goodbyes. Some of them bowed their heads. Others looked at me with teary eyes. Nobody said anything, but I understood the looks they gave me. Those looks carried silent voices that said, "We're sorry." I took a deep breath and entered the room. It was silent. Beside the bed, nurses stood administering glucose to Mum from cotton swabs to prevent her mouth from drying out. It was as if she was already gone. I sat on the chair beside the bed. Her mouth was half open, her breathing heavy, as if every breath was a struggle. In retrospect, as a doctor, I know that my mother had developed an embolism in her lungs that made it difficult for her to breathe. Perhaps they decided to let nature run its course because she was so ill, choosing instead to focus on ensuring that she would feel as little pain as possible at the end. A hoarse whisper came from her mouth. "Pani, Pani." The word for water in her native tongue. Was she thirsty? Her words were difficult to interpret, perhaps merely the restlessness of a consciousness slipping away. Suddenly I saw my dear friend Sunit in the doorway. One of the neighborhood kids, a sweet Indian boy with caramel brown eyes, always neat and well-dressed. I smoothed down my hair and smiled shyly. What was he doing here? "Hi, Anita," he said cautiously. He pulled up a chair, sat beside me, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Hi," I answered. There wasn't much more to say. We were children, and death felt so grown up. Watching a parent die, the experience becomes permanently etched in one's memory. Everyone at the hospital that day knew it was the end, but nobody told 13-year-old me that Mum was about to leave forever. I'd never thought that she might die of her disease. We were supposed to always be together, remain a family. I used to imagine future scenarios, playing them out in my mind, problems we might have to solve. What if another world war broke out? How would she get to safety if she couldn't walk? Death had never seemed an option to me until later that day, when my father and I sat in the car on the way home from the hospital. "Do you think Mum's going to die?" I asked. "Yes," Dad answered. He didn't cry, at least never in front of me. But later my cousin told me that my father had cried.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?